Let us start with a prayer. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Dear students, this is the fourth lecture in the series organized by Nalanda University on the significance of Nyāya and the application of Nyāya as a tool of research methodology. So, today's lecture focuses on the topic the application of Nyāya to the process of critical examination part 2, because the first part was taken up yesterday, and since the field is vast, I asked you to be prepared for the second part of the significance of Nyāya in research methodology, but today's discourse we will focus on vāda, because Nyāya or Indian method of critical examination has also been called vāda vidya or pramana shastra, tarka vidya, where vāda remains very central to our learning or to our attempt to learn the methods of critical inquiry to arrive at truth. So, in this sense, we will see as to how vāda as a category has been placed at the center of a Nyāya Shastra, of that science of logic, that science of critical reflection on reality, in order to help us understand the aspect of truth that we are trying to investigate through our research project, through our writing, through our speech or anything. The significance of vāda, as I perhaps told you earlier on also, that in the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna underlines it emphatically, that vāda pravadatam aham. In the sciences of logic or logical argumentation, Arjun, I am the logical conclusion, I am the method of critical investigation. So, vāda pravadatam aham. In all kinds of debates, I stand for discussion. So, that is one example. Another example is that in Vrihadaranyaka, if you, it's a longer Upanishad than usual Upanishads, Yagyavalkya and Maitreyi Samvada, it's a samvada, it's a form of discussion which is being held between Yagyavalkya and Maitreyi. And then Yagyavalkya instructs Maitreyi. How does he instruct? He says, Atma va are drishtavyah shrotavyo mantavyo nididhyasitavyo Maitreyi, if you want to know that highest form of reality, the true reality, then you have to realize self, and you should hear very carefully what you are supposed to hear. Shrotavyo, you have to see what is being revealed to you, you should hear what is being narrated to you. So, Shrotavyo, and then remember the next is Mantavyo, you should reflect, you should contemplate, reflect on whatever you are learning through your Acharya. So, Shrotavyo, Mantavyo, and then Nididhyasitavyo, and then proper contemplation, through proper practice, repeated practice. So, all these three stages, that is drishtavyo, then shrotavyo, then mantavyo, and then nididhyasitavyo. All these four stages are very crucial in the field of vāda, because without this kind of discipline, where whatever you see or hear, you should reflect on whatever you hear from different sources, whatever you come across by way of shabda pramana, verbal testimony, you should properly reflect on it, and then you should try to apply this to any aspect of life, to your efforts to create meanings, find out meanings in any walk of life. So, this is the process of vāda also. And remember, again, vāda, how this discussion leads to some kind of truths which are so vital for our existence. There is again an example which can be taken from Vedaranyaka Upanishad, when the devatas, that is those who are gifted to be immortal, blessed with immortality and the capacity to enjoy all the pleasures of the world or life, they are devatas, devatas. Then the second category of being is the humans, the human beings. The human beings are restless beings, very selfish, and they suffer from the cycle of birth and death. So, the second category is that of human beings, and the third category is of demons, the asuras, okay, the asuras, third category. Now, all these three I would say the beings belonging to these three categories, that is the humans, the demons or the asuras, and the devatas, they were in a confusion about what truth actually is. So, they approached Prajapati. They approached Prajapati, who was their father. Sir, give us instruction about the significance of reality. What is the ultimate reality we should pursue? What is the goal of our existence that we should pursue? We are very much confused. Prajapati only uttered one syllable, that is da. Then remember, this da is interpreted by the Dev, who were pleasure loving and are immortal. This da stood for the devas in terms of damyat. Damyat means to restrain. So, you who are given to pleasures should exercise self-restraint, damyat. Then to the humans, this da exemplified or stood for datta, that is, you should give away. You should learn how to renounce. You should learn how to share with others, because you are selfish. So, look, this is the message of the same da sound which was conveyed to the humans, and the humans derived their meaning. And then the third category is that of demons or the asuras, who were very violent, who were very tamasic, and to them the same sound connoted the third meaning, that is dayadhvam. You should have compassion for others, because if you do not have compassion for others, then you will destroy this life. So, remember, this is possible because there was a samvada. It is through the process of vāda, discussion, analysis, reflection on the same shabda, on the same sound, that is da, uttered by Prajapati, that three categories of beings derived their three vital meanings, which are very significant or crucial for the sustainability of this entire Srishti. So, that is one example. Now, we can discuss vāda as it has been analyzed or described in Nyāya Sutra and as a category or as a topic among the 16 categories or topics described by Rishi Gautam. Nyāya as a method of critical reasoning also presupposes the proper understanding of negative or destructive forms of discussion. Mind you, when I say vāda, vāda is also a category that enables you to understand the negative as well as the constructive forms of logical argumentation or critical examination, you know, because it is through vāda that you can understand by way of contrast what jalpa, equivocation, vitanda, keval, hetvabhasa, that is fallacious reasoning, all these are subsequent categories which are of crucial significance to the fold of vāda. Remember, it is in this broad category of vāda that vāda, then jalpa, equivocation, you know, and vitanda, keval, all these three are put together in the category of katha. Katha. What is katha? Katha means those narratives of discussion, those forms of discussion, because what is discussion? Discussion is present before you. You can have access to discussion only through katha, whether in the vachik mode, that is, whether you use narration, that is vachik, which is a way of expressing, communicating your ideas orally, or communicating your ideas, you know, scriptally, that is using the letters in the form of print. Okay. So this vāda, you know, is important because a sincere researcher or sincere seeker of truth may get to know that the other participant is willing to have a constructive discussion, that is vāda, or is using a category called jalpa, that is he or she only wants to score a victory over me, and therefore he or she is obstructing the method of vāda. Okay, he or she is becoming smarter enough to use the verbal play or the kind of word play in order to either obfuscate the meaning, impeding the meaning, or obfuscating the meaning. So that is it. Or the other person, while I am ready for a constructive discussion, the other party or the other participant is only interested in denying the propositions that I make without any proper reason, or having even a preliminary comprehension or understanding of the topic that is being discussed. So that is second, that is one may use vitanda, that is keval, or one may also use a kind of, as I said, either you use chhal or you use that kind of jalpa. Now chhal is also used as a kind of verbal deceit, you know, when you use your language as a kind of verbal deceit. So these are the three variations which can affect the nature of vāda, the nature of discussion. Okay? I will give you certain examples as to how these different facets of vāda, you know, also adversely impact on the constructive form of discussion. For example, you have been given to understand that there was an Aryan invasion on India, or there is an Aryan migration to India later on, but it has been conclusively proven, as we will discuss it later on, but that there was no vāda. You were given an example of a critical analysis only in the form of jalpa, that is polemics, that is controversy, or chal, equivocation, and hetvabhasa, that is fallacious or defective reasoning. You were told that this India, civilization of India, is divided into two parts, two sections, two civilizational categories. One is Aryan and the another is Dravida. Now, you were never told about the pratyaksha pramana, that is what is the evidence. So, you were not given any kind of pratyaksha, that is perception. There is no perception, and for anumana it is essential to have the reason, that is hetu. So, there was no hetu given to us in order to give the proper evidence to support the proposition that the Aryans were the invaders. So, all the Sanskrit texts written available to us right now were written by the invaders or migrants. That is to say, no Sanskrit texts, no production of knowledge was done by the inhabitants of India. Remember, we are all the descendants of the Aryans, mind you. And secondly, there was those who were native to India were called Dravidians. Okay? So, the Aryans entered North India and they also invaded the southern part of India. So, they also spread the Aryan civilization, Aryan culture even in south. So, therefore, India is virtually devoid of any kind of system of knowledge. This was taught to us through the making of different textbooks by supposedly great writers. And now, look at this vāda, that there are scholars now who have already found out the pramana, that is the archaeological evidence, the shabda pramana, that is the literary evidence, okay, the anumana pramana, that is through, that says that Arya does not denote a kind of racial identity. So Arya stands out, as a reference to a kind of a way of life where people practiced those values. Okay. So Arya was a signifier to signify. What does it signify? It signifies the nobility of character. Those people who were engaged in the dissemination, production of knowledge, and they were committed to leading a noble life. So that was Arya. And remember, the archaeological evidence of Sinoli, Rakhigadi, I would say for the last 5-6 years, you have the tangible evidence to disprove this Aryan invasion or migration theory. So the entire history needs to be rewritten, because whatever was being produced through hetvabhasa, fallacious reasoning, moreover polemics or controversy, that is jalpa, and worst of all, it was vitanda, it was cavil. So it denied any kind of capacity or potential, of production of knowledge, on the part of the Indians. So that has been disproved. Look at another book by Vikram Sampath. Now, an eminent freedom fighter, Vinayak Damodar Savarkar, was presented to Indians through the textbooks, again using the categories of critical reasoning. What I am trying to say, what you consider as truth may also be untruth. because that is fallacious reasoning. So, Vinayak Damodar Savarkar, there is a version of Vinayak Damodar Savarkar in the textbooks or analytical books written by the persons who belong to a particular ideology. But there are new evidence, there are Shabda Pramana, Itihasa Pramana, and based on that there is a new kind of inferential perception, very logically argued, articulated by Vikram Sampath, and who gave you a version of Vinayak Damodar Savarkar, which was kept hidden, which was not presented to the readers. So, you have this only in the field of vāda this is possible, because these writers are only interested in critically examining the given field of knowledge through logical evidences, through logical inferences. They are not trying to defeat or score a discursive victory over the other writers who produced other kinds of books. So, remember, it's not a kind of discursive battle. In vāda, the only primary goal is to examine the evidence, whether it is in support of your hypothesis or it goes against your hypothesis. So, no one is an enemy or a rival in the field of discussion or vāda, because if you have the evidence, then you will produce the evidence for that hypothesis and come out with your conclusion. Okay? And if the other person, you are engaged in a kind of discussion with other person, if the other person also furnishes tangible, verifiable, veridical proofs in support of his or her argument, he or she can write another book. Okay? That is vāda, because both of you may be producing, knowledge, about the same aspect of knowledge with your own demonstration of logical proofs and inferential perception, that is anumana pramana. That is different from what we call jalpa, where controversy or polemics is created, or cavil, where vitanda, destructive logic is used, or chala, or that is again equivocation, quibbling is used, remember. So, what I am trying to say, that a researcher has to be very careful now as to the sources you are using to support your hypothesis. Now, this is very interesting and intriguing as well. Your verbal testimony, your Shabda Pramana may not be the reliable Shabda Pramana, because whatever sources you are using may be based on faulty reasoning, defective reasoning. My point is, when you say that all the Vedas were written by the Aryans, and the Aryans were Sanskrit speaking people who entered India as invaders or migrants, then where are the proofs? But that was what was pseudo logic was presented to you as true logic. That is, what was pseudo Nyāya or pseudo reason, mind you, was presented to you in the form of proper reason, and since it was never critically examined on the basis of, again as I said, the pramana, what is the pratyaksha, what is anumana, what is upamana, and what is the shabda pramana, what is the hetu or hitvabhasa, what is the sanshaya, what is the prayojana, what is the dosha, dosha. We never tested all these discourses which were imposed on us, thanks to the dominance of a particular form of, as I said, that is the subversive vāda, that is the vivāda, that is the prativāda. So when you were inundated with, all the disciplines of social sciences, remember, they were overwhelmed with, overpowered with all those kinds of textbooks which presented India as anti-women, anti-nature, anti-human, as a casteist society, patriarchal society, as a superstitious society, as a society marked by lack of scientific temper. So the only hope that was offered to India is to adopt a research methodology, is to adopt a system of knowledge which was Western, because that Western knowledge vis-a-vis the Indian knowledge system was scientific, rational, critical, and therefore was the true path of pursuing right knowledge. So that is again what I am trying to say. You have to have that vivek, that discriminatory power to distinguish the true from the false, from Nyāya, proper logic from the false logic. And it is this methodology, that we are now only using Nyāya. It not only alerts us about the dangers of pseudo-Nyāya or pseudo-knowledge, you can say, or pseudo-anumana, pseudo-inference, defective logic. It also enables us to use your own logic constructively and creatively. So, on the one hand, it teaches us, it instructs us as to how to use and employ the logical categories in order to arrive at truth. It also sensitizes us about the possible dangers that you may encounter while engaged in a discussion with others, because the others may use false logic, equivocation, quibbling, wrangling, cavilling, in order to defeat you, or in order to rather let adharma prevail over dharma. Remember, so this is such a practical advice, I mean to say, it's such a pragmatic advice that that the Rishi has given us, that it is not a level playing field, as we say now in modern parlance. It's not a level play field, level playground. No, there may be people who are interested only in scoring a victory over you, only in subjugating your minds, controlling your minds, enslaving your minds, So, a researcher should also know that in the practical domain of critical examination of reality or truth in any given field of knowledge, Nyāya implies parartha anumana. Look, there are two kinds of anumana. One is swartha anumana, that I arrive at this conclusion only for my own belief, what I believe in. I arrive at that conclusion because I wish to know it for myself only. That is swartha anumana. But whenever you are engaged in a vāda or in a discussion with one or more than one participants, you are bound to create inferential knowledge or inferential perception which should be convincing enough, convincing enough to make the other person believe that this is the valid argument. So, in order to support the validity of your argument, when you are engaged in discussion with one or more participants, you have to be cautious of the parartha anumana, and while you are trying to communicate your own position of either the conclusion of your argument or the what they say the import of your argument to others by way of parartha anumana, then you have to be careful about your hypothesis or proposition that you make, because each proposition has got to be supported by the proper reason, that is hetu. And then this hetu, this reason has an example or not, because in the first example, that is was an Aryan invasion. Now, if this is the proposition, then what is the reason? Because there was an invasion, because and then if you have a reason, then what is the pramana? What is the evidence? Can there be a reason without evidence? Without pratyaksha? Without anumana? Without upamana? So, where is the example in support of your proposition, in support of your reason? So, they say that, sir, it happened because the Aryans were the nomadic people, agricultural people, okay? And here we had a civilization which was Nagari, Now, this is contrary to all the evidence which is available to us through literary evidence or archaeological evidence, so Shabda Pramana or Ateha Pramana, that is contrary to it. And then the application, the Upanaya, how do you apply that insight? And so, can there be an application? Can there be an application? When you have the evidence of the continuous existence of that mode of life, which is common from Kashmir to Kanyakumari and from northeast to Gujarat, in one form or another, the linguistic differences notwithstanding, when even in the so-called Dravidian languages, there is so much of blending of Sanskrit words or Sanskrit terms. Look at how our student from Indonesia, she uses putri, she is a Muslim girl, but she uses the noun putri, Sanskrit word. Now ask her, was she ever converted to this civilization which used Sanskrit as a mode of communication? How come a Muslim girl? Now this is the process of finding evidence. This is the process of finding evidence. Here is a person who comes from Sri Lanka and his name is Narada. Now ask him whether his ancestors faced any threat, or were they ever forced to use Narada, which is a Sanskrit referent? How come that Sanskrit term travels to Indonesia? How come those Sanskrit terms travel to China, to Japan? Can you compare the spread of English as a language with the spread of Sanskrit and that civilization which was coded through Sanskrit and its Prakrit Bhashas? Can you compare? The linguistic imperialism connoted by, denoted by, suggested by Abhida, Lakshana, Vyanjana, all these three modes, by the imperium of English as a mode, it was not a mode of communication, it was a mode of control. Language is not bad, but the users of language, that is the users of English language, made it a tool to dominate the minds, to enslave the minds of the people. So, you cannot equate the the dissemination of civilizational dissemination of the ideas of India, India's knowledge tradition, you know, with the spread of Western knowledge tradition, which was only possible through colonization, imperialism or cultural imperialism. So, that is again the issue that has to be discussed, that all those source texts that you are using, whether they are Indian or Western, mind you, you are in Nalanda, now you may read many research articles and even books that Buddhism is something else than Hinduism, that Hinduism is marked by caste distinction and Buddhism is free from any kind of idea of caste, and therefore you start believing in this version of Hinduism, and you have certain books also which are in circulation that tell you that Hinduism means casteism, antipathy to women, and you know, this aversion to equality. So, in order to not reform this, the Buddha presented an alternative path, you know, which is free from jati and which is free from all those kinds of things or ideas which were there in Hinduism. But once you start using logic, critical analysis, you start using collecting evidence, pramana, then you find that the same terms and terminology which is central to Buddha, you know, the same terminology is central to what we call Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma. That the Buddha at best may be considered to be a great mind who reformed certain inconsistencies which had already crept, you know, or crept into the texture of what we call Hinduism or the Sanatana Dharma. So, he presented another reformed version, because there is no tangible evidence that Hindus converted Buddhists to Hindus or Buddhists converted Hindus to the fold of Buddha. In his sermons used to say that Bodhisattva can only happen in an Uccha Kula, see Lalit Vistara, that only in the now Kula is neither caste nor, or caste is not jati. And look at his description of Brahmanas in the Dhammapada. Look at the inscriptions of Ashoka, how he says that the greatest respect be awarded to the Shramanas and Brahmanas and the animals. That the Brahmins are Brahmins by virtue of their actions is not a Buddhist tenet. The same idea is there in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Upanishads and in the Vedas. What you call Brahman is based on is a category which is based on the qualities, on the nobility of character. So, look at this, the faulty logic, the Hetvabhas is that Jainism and Buddhism, they separated, they are not the reformed versions, rather they are the different paths altogether. That is how pseudo-critical reasoning, because it was never checked out from the tangible Shabda Pramana, because there is only Shabda Pramana, there is only Shabda Pramana or Aiteha Pramana. So, this is how reason or Nyāya is hijacked by, abducted by, sometimes even harmed by, you know, the pseudo logic, the perpetrators of pseudo logic, whose only aim is, purpose is, ideology is to destroy the civilization called India, the integrality of India, that unity of India. Now, there is an example of Holocaust suffered by inflicted on the Jews. Now, you may find several books where they say there was no Holocaust, not these 5 million Jews were exterminated by Hitler. Then what will you do? As a research student, suppose you make references to those and you make them their verbal testimony. Your verbal testimony rests on the denial of Holocaust, the negation of Holocaust, because you have some books to support your thesis. Now, will it be accepted as veridical verbal testimony? No, because that verbal testimony itself fails on the anvil of what? Pramana as well as Anumana. So, a research scholar, that is why I say that the test is already there in our Indian methods of critical reasoning, that you have to ask for right kinds of proof, that is pramana, and then the process adopted by the writer to create their pararthanumana, that is their inferential perception. What is the process adopted by? Then what is the process of argumentation? How do you argue? You can't produce truth that I am a Hindu and therefore I am whatever I speak is truth. Similarly, you can't say that I am a Christian and therefore whatever I am saying is truth. Then there is no scope for Nyāya or logical argumentation. No, that has even Arjuna interrogated Krishna, who is supposed to be the manifestation of the divine power. No one accepts the verbal testimony, Shabda Pramana of the other without testing whether the person is an apta or a realized person, he or she possesses true knowledge, and third, he or she possesses a noble character also. And therefore, in Nyāya, Shabda Praman is crucial, but Shabda Praman should come from those who not only verbalize knowledge, but they also practice knowledge. Listen to it very carefully. Whereas in the Western tradition, those who are considered to be the ideologues, they are generally the tall, great intellectuals who never practiced their ideology. Okay? And since they also talked in terms of dogmatic ideology, isms. Each ism is a kind of discursive violence on the other ism. So, their mode is a combative mode where they resort to jalpa, vitanda and chala in order to prove that my feminist position is better than the patriarchal position represented in Indian texts. Now, they would never go to the Indian text. Even if they go, they will only quote those what you call interpolated quotations, which you can find in all kinds of systems of knowledge, interpolated, that is controversial. They will not quote from the substantive part of the knowledge tradition of India. My point is, suppose there is a mango and there is one speck of you can say either some infection on a mango, which you can remove with knife, and the entire mango is delicious and free from any kind of defect. Will you say the entire mango was rotten? In a packet of mangoes that weighs 50 kg, you find one mango which is rotten. Would you say the entire packet of mangoes weighing 10 kgs or 100 kgs, the entire packet you will throw? Don't throw the baby with the bath water. But in order to tarnish the knowledge tradition of India, I am sorry to say that you have been given hettvabhasa in place of defective reasoning in place of reasoning, Nyāya defective logic, or defective process of argumentation as the valid process of argumentation. And since we did not check out, the fault lies with us, that we as students, we did not check out where the truth is, what the pramanas are. So, this is as I said, when the inference is frustrated by perception itself, that fire is not hot. Suppose it is like the Aryans were the invaders in India, like the fire is not hot. The same are these two propositions are the same. As it is created such as a pot, as those who invaded India were Aryans. India was invaded by Aryans, and then they say those who invaded India were Aryans, and then this argument resembles, an inference in all its external features, but on critical examination it can easily be found out that the inferential knowledge thus derived is rejected immediately by just the opposite judgment derived from the perception of fire that is not hot. So, once you start digging up the evidence to support that the Aryans were invaders, you find out that the Aryans were the people who always lived in India. So, the very proposition is defective on the basis of logic, not on the basis of blind belief. Secondly, negationism. Negationism is you go on negating the truth, not only hiding, but also negating the truth. So, you say, sir, there was no genocide in the history of India by the invaders. People came here, settled here, became Indians, and we are also Indians. So, this is our history, that everyone who came to India, even as an invader, was welcomed in India, because India is a tolerant country. India stands for peace and harmony, and it is a country full of non-violence, driven by the principle of non-violence, value of non-violence, and therefore, India welcomed all and did not offer any resistance to any invading party. Now, this is contrary to the available facts. You are again using negationism. Negationism, you are only contradicting the available evidence that India was invaded by the enemies. Truth. Because India was weak, India was internally divided, yet Indians offered heroic resistance, for which, to support this counter proposition, you have the proof, that is the Shabda Pramana, verbal testimonies written by the historians who accompanied the invaders, and they also tell you the truth, that Indians were massacred, there were mass killings. So, instead of, as I said, that the truth was hijacked by untruth, in the sense that you were given a history which was a kind of very wokist, very politically correct, it was a kind of history which pleases all, and which pleases all, that means this can never be the true history. History should be grounded in truth, there should be some logic that stands on tangible evidence. So, this is how I say that why you should be very alert as a researcher, as a student, as someone who is engaged in arriving at truth in any walk of life. So, the theory of Nyāya makes us aware of the possible uses and abuses of logic. So, what is the connection between defective reasoning, and that is the hetvabhasa, and that pseudo reasoning. Now, hetvabhasa, look, pseudo reasoning means your entire process of critical inquiry is faulty, because your entire logic is against logic itself. But hetvabhas means you are only pointing to the false reason. Your proposition may be right, okay? Your proposition may be right, but in order to support that proposition, you are citing a wrong, incorrect, defective reason. And the problem with hetvabhas is that hetvabhas cannot stand the process of inference, because you make, that is, what are the essential marks of a sound hetu, that is the true logic or a kind of sound reasoning which you can easily understand, and you can differentiate true reasoning with defective or false reasoning. So, there are 5 essential marks of sound hetu, that is the sound reason. One is there has to be the paksha sattva. Paksha sattva means, paksha means whatever the basis of your proposition, that is compulsory presence of reason or hetu in case under consideration. That is, the Aryans were the invaders, okay? Aryans were the invaders. So, the reason of invasion, invasion is inherent in the proposition itself. So, now the burden of proof is on you to support this proposition by categorically offering the proof or evidence, that India was invaded by the enemies and Aryans were the invaders. So, then sapaksha sattva, sapaksha is that, sapaksha is even more, I would say it is a much sounder proposition, that your reason must be present in all positive instances, that there cannot be a doubt in the proposition as well as the inferential process, that if the Aryans were the invaders, then you have to offer the reason, true reason in support of your argument. Then of course, that valid udaharana also, valid udaharana in order to support, again in udaharana the reason must be present, and then when you apply that reason to check out the validity of the proposition, that is the application part, even in the application that reason should be present. Like you can't say that the fire is not hot by saying that fire consists of water. Fire consists of water and therefore fire is not hot. Now, this can't be offered either by way of udaharana or by way of hetu or reason. Then vipaksha asatva, vipaksha, that the negative instances, there are negative instances of reasoning. So, hetu must be absent in all the negative instances. That is, hetu is that if you want to say that the Aryans were the invaders, and if you say Aryans were not the invaders, then the reason that they invaded India cannot be present in your proposition that Aryans were the invaders of India. I mean, say as you choose the reason, you have to choose the examples to support that reason. You have to furnish the evidence, that is the pramanas, in accordance with the reason. Your Sangeeta, your conception of Sangeeta is not based on the Western conception of music. So, what is, why? Why? Mind you, Nyāya teaches us to learn how we think what we think first. Second, how we think and why we think. That is the social connect of Nyāya. For whom this logic is being adopted and how this logic is being adopted by us, how we should employ logic in our thought process, and then why should we use this kind of critical reasoning? Why? What is the purpose? Purpose is to arrive at truth, and by arriving at truth you may get to know that the fire is not hot, that the Aryans were not invaders, that more than 4 crore Indians were slaughtered and have been slaughtered by the invaders of India. If you read history, if you read those evidence, that is your Shabda Pramana. You should not trust my individual opinion. No, you should trust the histories written by those court historians who accompanied the invaders. If you count the numbers of people killed by them, so when you have the evidence, you have the reason, then how would you say that India is a country that always welcomed the invaders? Is there any country that welcomes those invaders who enact mass killings and genocide? So, that is again see it is very pertinent to the students of history as well as literary or cultural representations. And then there is abadhitatva, sorry, there is another, there is a asat prati apakshatva, that is the real reason, there should be the absence of another or opposite reason. That is, one proposition cannot contain one reason and another reason which is contrary to the first reason. You can't give two contradictory reasons to support the basic proposition or pratigya. That is, fire is hot. You can't say fire is hot because the fire presupposes some kind of chemical reaction that creates heat, and secondly, fire is basically non-hot or not hot, because fire involves a chemical reaction, which produces cold. So, you can't have that fire is not hot because it creates the condition of cold, and fire is not hot because it creates the conditions of heat. Two contrary reasons cannot be present. Then 5 steps in the process of inferential perception. Now, we have already explained these 5 steps, that the pratigya is, if you say that there is fire on the hill, now that requires to be proved. What is the reason? Reason say that there is smoke there. Since there is a smoke, there is fire, because wherever there is a smoke, there is fire, as in our kitchen. You may, so that is the udaharana that you give in support of the reason that you have already given, and then you make an application. Application is the hill has a smoke and that is pervaded by fire. Since that hill has smoke, it is pervaded by fire. Again you see the proper, and then the conclusion, therefore, there is fire on the hill. So, in this way the hill is the paksha, because you are investigating whether the hill is on fire or not on fire, whether the hill is on fire or not on fire. So, this is the paksha, the minor term. The fire is the sadhya, major term, whether there is fire on the hill or there is no fire on the hill. So, that is the sadhya. Sadhya means you have to prove whether the hill is on fire or not on fire. And smoke is the reason. Since there is smoke, since there were invaders who entered India and they were Aryans, you are making these two things, and then you are making the propositions that the invaders were Aryans. Same, the relationship between smoke and the fire is called Vyapti. The relationship between the Aryans and the invaders, will be called the middle term, that is the Vyapti. Vyapti means the completion of logical circle. Now, merely a Sudhir Kumar says, or Romila Thapar says, or Irfan Habib says that this is the historical truth, it carries no meaning at all, until or unless you furnish the proper evidence, the proper inferential perception, that satisfies the steps of logical argumentation. So, a pseudo argument or Nyāya abhasa or Nyāya abhasa is therefore one that is based on pseudo inference. Your anuman is wrong. Your anuman that say, for example, you can say that sir, there is a book that says that Tipu Sultan was a great patriot and he was kind and very magnanimous to his people who were his praja, that is the proposition. But if you just excavate or look for the evidence, the pramana, most of the pramana are in fact of verbal testimony, letters written by Tipu Sultan, the court historians of Tipu Sultan, the historians who were the European travelers who wrote the account of all those deeds and battles fought by Tipu Sultan. So, from different sources you get to know that Tipu Sultan massacred the non-Muslims on a great scale. He also massacred the Christians. Look, this is truth. It has nothing to do whether you like Tipu Sultan or do not like Tipu Sultan. History is not written because I happen to like Shivadi and therefore my history of Shivadi would always praise and glorify Shivadi as an ideal man. That is not the way. You write a poem on Shivadi, you write a poem on Tipu Sultan. Are you getting my? That is why Nyāya does not admit of literary representation as a pramana. Now, you got the answer, because the literary representation may not demand or may escape that logical process of those logical steps which we apply to test the verifiability or truthfulness of any statement which is presented as a truth claim. As a truth claim, these are all the truth claims which are in fact they are the claims to untruth. So, a researcher is free to construct a critically sound or uncritically sound. You can make a critically sound or you can make a critically unsound proposition. No one stops you. No one stops. Maybe when you make a critically unsound proposal, that proposal may be funded by some foreign universities which are ready to accept any kind of critically unsound proposition which will present India or Indian civilization as a kind of veritable hell for Dalits women. So, that is your choice. India does not offer, or our knowledge tradition does not offer, that all those people who are using you can call perverted logic, they should be punished. No punishment, because even those who are using jalpa, vitanda, or chala, they are not to be executed or persecuted. They can only be avoided. Avoid them. So again I say you have to make a distinction between this hitvabhasa and pseudo nyaya, that is, in support of proposition or your uphold your proposition, you may use a critically sound proposition or hetu, or critically unsound, that is your choice. But if that proposition rests on defective logic or pseudo inference, then it is violative of some well established and logically sound belief. So, you will violate that kind of logic, whether you are found out, exposed as a practitioner of pseudo logic, like most of the writers of books of ancient history and modern Indian history are now under scrutiny. How do you presume that the Shudras or Dalits were not allowed to study in Indian education system? Because once you got the data from the British Museum, Dharmpalji's A Beautiful Tree, they said that more than 60% were the students that came from the lower castes. Most of the teachers, more than 60% teachers were from the lower castes. So, how can you presume? Where does your pratigya? How can your pratigya and proposition that India, in Indian education system, there was no place for the lower castes? The first book of Indian aesthetics, that is Natya Shastra, it says that it is precisely for the empowerment of all people belonging to all the varnas, not the savarnas or dvaja, all the varnas, including women, that this Natya Veda is being created. No such discrimination was made. And what is the contemporary relevance? Now, look at these statements. They are all not made by me, they are all these statements which are made by Gautam in the second chapter of Nyāya Sutra. There is no natural connection between a word and the object signified by it. Look at this. No natural connection between a word and the object signified it. Who is an Arya? They said Aryans were invaders, a racial identity according to them. But what does he say? There is no natural connection between a word and the object signified by it, because once you find out the meanings suggested by the word Arya, there is no such meaning that refers to Arya implying invasion or Arya implying invaders. For example, we do not find that such words as food, fire and hatchet are accompanied by the actions of filling, burning and splitting. Once you say this is fire, now is there fire anywhere around you? When you say food, now is there any kind of taking or consumption of food taking place near you? So there is no process that with which you can immediately, either affiliate the word with, or the word that you utter, you can't affiliate that word with any kind of process that starts by uttering that word. So the connection between the word and the concept is arbitrary. Word means the name of that word. Mind you, even Saussure, because he was a student of Panini's Ashtadhyayi, he said that the words Words are created by the signifier, the words are created by the society or that particular context, which is cultural and social. So, and then there is no universal uniformity of connection between a word and its meaning. Again, this is how you migrate from the structuralist position to the post-structuralist position. There is no universal uniformity. So, to you that word, apple is not a word. So, the apple is a word which is used to refer to a particular fruit. You use another word. So, the thing is that you cannot use the same referent to refer to that object as we do in different. And secondly, even within one language system, the same word may stand for different meanings. The table has 4 legs. The table has 4 legs. Is table a living creature? And what are the legs? What do the legs stand for when they are used to be the parts of a furniture? Now, this is my memory. What is the memory of where is the memory card? Now, these two things were unthinkable say 50 years ago. They were not used. Memory card, what does it mean, memory card? You have to download. Now, downloading is, we do not know how to download things, how to upload things. So, you see no universal uniformity of connection between a word and its meaning, like nation, like culture. So, nation is a concept that has some other coordinates. It connotes certain constituents of meaning which are absent in the Indian context of Rashtra, and when you substitute Rashtra with nation, mind you, you are committing 2 errors. You are creating pseudo logic in the form of in order to create logic, you are creating pseudo logic, because nation cannot be equated with Rashtra. So, the meaning of a word is, according to Nyāya, is genus, form and individual. Now, remember, the meaning of a word depends on, there is some kind of error that has crept in here. The meaning of a word is contingent on what? Genus, form and individual. What is genus? Genus is jati. Look at it very carefully. It is from the Nyāya that I am speaking about. It is not a book of linguistics, Bhasha Vijnana. The Rishi says that any particular word, how would we check that this word produces this meaning? First, it refers to a genus, and then form akriti, and then individual vyakti. All these three, these are the three, you can say, conditions, or these are the three constituents of any entity. How? When I take this book in my hand, then book, the moment I utter the name book, then book is a genus, book is a jati, that there are so many books of this jati belonging to this jati. Without that jati, suppose this book can never be understood as book if it has no jati. Therefore, if you come across an object or entity that you have never seen or read about, you are unable to relate that word to the meaning. You can't find out suppose there is a child, a newborn child. Now, if you give that book to him, will it be book to him or her? A newborn child has never seen all those objects. So, remember, so these three things make a particular object, or they create the logic, the validity of the name of that object. What is that? Is it should have jati and akriti. Then this book is shaped like this. Suppose there is something in my hand which is in the form of a chart. Then how would you discriminate that this book is a book and not a chart, and this chart is a chart and not a book, because akriti, its shape. And then individual, there is some individuality. Individual has been used not in the sense of a human individual, that entity per se. Book, because that book may be an individual specimen. A mango may be a specimen of that as a mango, as a mango. It may be a red mango, it may be a yellow mango, it may be any other kind of mango, you know. And what is that form? Then what is that individual? What is that vyaktitva of that vyakti? Vyaktitva means what is the individuality of that individual? Individual means that object. What is that individuality of that individual? It has a definite form and it is the abode of particular qualities. Now, this is Gautam's Nyāya Sutra. You are not reading a book on semiotics. It says that you can only understand any entity as an individual because it has an akriti and it has certain gunas. So, a mango will not be an orange because the guna of that akriti, first akriti, an orange will have a different akriti form, and then mango will have certain qualities which will be lacking in an orange. So, on the basis of this difference of form and qualities, akriti and guna. Now, what is that form? Look at this rigorous argumentation. What is that form? Akriti. Akriti is that which is called the token or sign of the genus or jati. You are a human. What is your jati? Human, a human being. But he says you are a human being and not an elephant, because an elephant is also a living being, but the living being in the form of animal, in the form of an elephant, will have a different akriti as well as quality. What is that jati? You equate jati with caste, a Portuguese term. Look at the discussion of jati in Indian knowledge system. Look, even the Buddha says in Digha Nikaya, there is a long discourse that Ananda, no one can be free from jati. As I said, is Shivadi and Shivadi's brother will have another jati. Shivadi and Ansh, they belong to, because you may say, sir, there is a common, we belong to human jati, of course, but all you too have some special qualities and individual qualities. You have the akriti bheda, then you have the guna bheda. So, you can't be lumped together. And how, and then Buddha was asked, then how can we transcend jati and jati bhed? Well, so long as things exist in this world, jati cannot be eliminated. A table will remain a table. Look at this kind of dualistic understanding of the world, Shivadi. This Dvaita is a very valid category. Bheda. Jati means that there are differences because things exist with those differences. That is the first level of existence. So, jati or genus is that whose nature is to produce the same conception. So, you belong to a jati because you both are humans, I mean to say, in that sense you belong to the same jati, both are humans, but there is a human being in the form of Shivadi and there is a human being in the form of an elephant, then jati bhed ho gaya. Even within the same, as I said, within the same jati there can be bhed, because on the basis of attributes, on the basis of akriti. So, the word signifies, now you see here the conclusion is that the word signifies all these three. What are these three coordinates? That the jati, that is genus, akriti or form, or individual or vyakti, though the prominence is given to be one of them. Though the prominence is given to one of them, this is spelling error. Sometimes whenever you emphasize similarity, we are all human beings, because we have to emphasize the similarity, our belonging to the same collectivity. So, we would say that we are all human beings, because then you are evoking the first category, that is jati. Then when you want to create a kind of difference, then you say, though we belong to the same jati, but our akriti is different. Akriti is different. Look, a mouse is a mammal and a human being is also a mammal, isn't it? But on the basis of akriti, the two human beings are different. So, an African human will be different from a European human. So, when we have to create a difference, like an orange and a banana is a banana, both are fruits by jati. There is a common entity. What is the common genus? The genus is both are fruits. But on the basis of, so where you have to create a subtle difference or any kind of difference, you prioritize form, akriti. Then in practical matters, much importance is paid to akriti. देखो कितना, how much practical is this? We think that wherever that form is different, things are different. So, this is the primary notion of race also, on the basis of color. You created that entire discourse of anthropology on the basis of jati, guna and vyakti, and all these modes whereby you can justify that differentiation. So, an anthropologist first focuses on differences, that is akriti. Then he goes on to ethnicity. Jati. What is ethnicity? Your jati, commonness, common elements. So, an individual or vyakti is any substance. Look, again he clarifies, an individual or vyakti is any substance which is cognized by senses. Now, you say that, sir, individual means a human being or a living being. No, this table or chair is also a vyakti. Now, mind you, because a vyakti is cognized by senses. Vyakti comes from vyakta. Whatever is expressed or manifest, vyakta, and vyakti, the state of being manifest. So, all these entities, objects of universe, they are vyakti, because they are vyakta. That is why there is another another pad, abhivyakta and abhivyakti. But you can't equate, sir, I am an abhivyakti. Yes, you are an abhivyakti also, expression also. And God forbid that you are a vyakti without abhivyakti. And that is not possible. So, an individual or vyakti is any substance which is cognized by the senses as a limited, look at this. Now, again the qualification is there. It is qualified by that is an abode of color, taste, smell, touch, weight, solidity, tremulousness, velocity, elasticity. So, some of these traits, and you can say etc., are shared by those things which are called jada. Jada means non-living. They have weight, they have this qualities of being measured in terms of length, breadth, weight, but those sensate beings, those living creatures, they may be also called, even the plants have color, they have touch, they have weight, solidity, even movement. So, look at the features of the substance, and the jati or genus cannot be recognized without form. Like the cowhood is a jati, that is gotra. The bookness of a book, as I said, genus is jati. That you are a human, suppose an animal like a cow is juxtaposed to you, is placed adjacent to you. But what is the jati? Jati says that you are a human and that animal is a cow, because they both have jati, first on the basis of akriti, form. So, on the basis of, so there is one cow and there are many cows of the same nature, that is the commonality of cow. Cow, the cowhood or cowness of a cow means there are many such cows of the same akriti, of the same form. So, there is a book because there are many such books of the same akriti, only then it creates a jati. Seeing a cow somewhere, we acquire the general notion of cows, that is, we think that this is a cow because the cowhood resides in that cow, that is the meaning. The general notion enables us on all subsequent occasions to recognize individual cows. So, when we say a yellow cow or a white cow or a black cow, remember cowhood resides in them. Otherwise, you can't specify that this is a black cow, because black you can recognize, but if you can't recognize the cowhood, so then you can't speak about a cow. So, look at all these kinds of, as I said, the ramifications, the logical system of making critical examination, critical inquiries, about and into the real nature of objects. That is something which was produced in India without the taint of any dogmatic ideology or cancel culture, that since you come from the West, therefore, we do not welcome your idea. No such cancel culture, no such negation of other ideas, entails in the Indian knowledge system. And the best example is Nyāya, Mīmānsa, Sankhya, Nyāya. We are ready to welcome the Western notions of science or atomic theory or molecular theory, since this is in consonance with our theory of atoms. Now, when was it discovered? We discovered the theory of atoms thousands of years ago. Who discovered, which civilization discovered the theory of numbers? Zero. This is the Indian. It's a proof. So, but we do not say that all other civilizations of the world do not have access to mathematics, do not have access to science or scientific reasoning. We welcome them. But remember, we can take pride in making a claim that our systems of thought are free from any kind of theological, religious, political or cultural, dogmatic ism or ideology. So, that is all that I wanted to say in this lecture. Thank you very much.